The morning my brother finished his testimony and stepped down from the witness stand, my father leaned back in his chair like a man watching a guaranteed hand play out at the poker table. My mother pressed her hands together in her lap and exhaled, satisfied, settled, already certain of what was coming. My brother smoothed the front of his blazer and walked back to his seat without looking at me once. I was sitting at the defendant's table with my hands flat on the wood, watching all of it. Nobody in that courtroom believed I was about to win. I could feel it in the way the gallery shifted, the way my brother's attorney was already straightening his files like the case was over. Even the court clerk seemed restless. The only person who hadn't moved was Judge Serrano. She was still reading, slowly turning pages one at a time. Then she stopped. Her finger traced something on the page. She lifted her head and looked directly at me, not at my brother, not at his attorney, at me. "Miss Calloway," she said, her voice measured and careful. "Before we proceed, is there anything in your brother's testimony you'd like to address?" The room went quiet. My father's expression held for one beat, then cracked at the corners, just slightly, the way it does when something isn't going the way he planned. It wasn't. If you've ever been the person in your family who holds everything together while being told you're the one who can't handle anything, stay with me. Because the way this ended took me a long time to believe, even after I lived it. To explain what I was doing in that courtroom and defending a bakery against my own family, I have to go back to how our house worked, or didn't. My brother Grant was 3 years younger than me, and had never in his life waited his turn for anything. Not the bathroom in the morning, not the remote, not credit for something he hadn't done. My parents saw his loudness and called it drive. They saw his confidence and called it potential. My father used to say, "Grant's going to do something big," the way you say a thing about the weather, a fact, self-evident, not worth examining too closely. I had different facts. I was the one who remembered dentist appointments and kept track of permission slips and made sure the doors were locked before bed. They called me responsible. For years, I thought that was a compliment. It took longer than it should have to understand that what they meant was, you don't need as much attention, so we won't give it. The specific memory I keep coming back to happened when I was 12. My father had a collection of vintage baseball cards he kept in a glass case in his home office. Not sentimental pieces, but investment pieces, the kind he referenced at dinner parties. One Saturday afternoon, Grant went in there without permission and knocked the case off the shelf. A 1969 Reggie Jackson rookie card got a crease in it that my father said cost him $400 in sector stairs in collector value. I was at the kitchen table doing homework. I had been there for over an hour. My father came out of the office and looked between us. Grant said he didn't know what happened. He shrugged, which I had always thought was a remarkable thing to do in that situation. My father turned to me. "You were supposed to be watching him," he said. I told him I hadn't been watching him because I'd been in the kitchen. He could look at my homework. I hadn't moved. "You're the older one," he said. "You're responsible." That word again. 2 weeks grounded. Grant was told to be more careful. That evening I sat on my bedroom floor listening to them watch television downstairs, and I made a quiet decision, the kind I made most of my decisions, without telling anyone. I decided that speaking up was not going to protect me. Arguing only gave people something to argue back with. What would protect me was keeping records. I found a spiral notebook and wrote down the date, what happened, what was said. I kept that notebook under my mattress. I started a new one every few months. I didn't know at 12 why I was doing it. I just knew it felt like the only thing I could actually control. High school passed the way it does when you've already been sorted into a category. Grant played varsity baseball, got recruited to a school in Virginia, and left at 18 with a handshake from my father and a new pickup truck. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and a partial scholarship to a state school 2 hours north. My mother made lasagna. My father said I was going to be fine. I worked a register at a home goods store on weekends for 2 years to cover the gap between the scholarship and what a semester actually cost. I came home on school breaks and watched Grant's college highlights play on my parents' television and helped clear the table after dinner without anyone asking. After graduation, I came back to town. Administrative work at a regional insurance company, decent pay, manageable hours. A one-bedroom apartment 6 miles from my parents. His company transferred him, and he had a house with a 2-car garage, and a wife who made my mother laugh at the dinner table. Had my parents' complete and obvious attentions every single time he walked through the door. By then, I had genuinely stopped expecting anything different. I wasn't bitter about it the way I had been at 12. I had just reorganized my life around the truth of it. What changed was my grandfather. Grandpa Pete was my mother's father. He had lived on the east side of town in the same house since 1978 and run a small bakery on Clement Street for as long as I could clearly remember, a converted storefront called Calloway's Crumb that sold cinnamon rolls the size of your hand, sandwich loaves, seasonal pies, and custom cakes for graduations and weddings. He drove a battered white Ford Transit van to make deliveries twice a week to 2 local diners and the hospital cafeteria, a route he had driven so many times he said he could do it in his sleep. I was the grandchild who visited, not because anyone assigned me to it, just because I liked him. He was direct and not particularly interested in performing warmth he didn't feel, which I found restful. He used to say that the problem with our family was that they confused volume with importance. He saw what was happening. I think he had been watching for years. He died on a Wednesday in October, after about 8 months of slow decline. The kind of illness that gives you time but doesn't make it easier. The week before he passed, he asked me to come alone. I drove over after work and sat at his kitchen table, and he slid a manila envelope across to me without any particular ceremony. Inside was a 2-page handwritten will, witnessed by his neighbor and notarized at the UPS store on Route 9. He left the bakery business to me, the equipment, the recipes, the customer accounts, the trademark on the name, and the van. The building was leased, so that stayed with the landlord, but everything else was mine. "You're the one who showed up," he said. He said it the way you'd explain why you handed someone the last cup of coffee. My family's response was immediate. My mother thought I should liquidate the equipment and split the money with everyone. My father thought the name might be worth something if sold quickly. Grant was quiet at first, just nodding along, which I would later understand was not the same as not having an opinion. I listened to all of it. Then I took the keys and drove to Clement Street by myself. The bakery had been closed for 3 months. Dust on the display cases, empty shelves, refrigeration units that needed recalibrating. The commercial Wolf oven was the most valuable thing in the room, and it took 2 full weekends to clean it properly. The van had a cracked mirror and an oil leak that left a stain on the parking pad. I want to be straightforward about something. I was not a baker. But I knew how to run things. I understood the structure Grandpa Pete had built, the phone regulars, the delivery accounts, the walk-in trade that ran on visibility and consistency. I enrolled in an online food service management course, pulled his recipe binders off the shelf, and spent my evenings in the bakery practicing until what I produced was actually good. It took a while. I made a lot of cinnamon rolls I didn't serve anyone before I made ones I would. Every expense came from my own savings. The oil change, new display case liners, the updated health permit from the county, a website built by a woman in my apartment building for $200. I registered the business as an LLC in my name. On the advice of a small business attorney I found through the County Resource Center, I filed a trademark ASS application for the Calloway's Crumb name, the signature recipe format, and the CES. That last part, the trademark, felt like overkill at the time. The business was barely breaking even. But something in me, some version of that 12-year-old with the spiral notebook, said to do it anyway. File the paperwork. Keep the record. I reopened on a Thursday in February. The first week was quiet. A few people from the old neighborhood came by out of loyalty to my grandfather, bought a loaf, looked around uncertainly. I gave out samples and thanked them. The second week, a woman came in who said she'd seen my post in the neighborhood Facebook group. The third week, a food blogger from the county lifestyle website came in unannounced and wrote a short piece that called us a small town bakery that actually feels like one. That ran in March. By June, the line on Saturday mornings was out the door. I hired a part-time counter person, a retired school secretary named Ms. Fenn, who remembered every regular's order and name within 2 weeks, and turned out to be the best thing that had happened to the place since my grandfather opened it. I renegotiated the 2 diner contracts and added a third account. A new cafe near the university that wanted delivery 3 days a week. The van was on the road constantly. I was at the bakery by 4 most mornings and usually didn't leave until 7 at night. I didn't talk about any of this at family dinners. When my mother asked how things were going, I said fine. When my father asked if I was managing the bills, I said yes. They weren't asking out of genuine interest. They were checking to see if I had failed yet. Then Grant came in on a Tuesday afternoon in July. He stood in the middle of the floor with his hands in his pockets, looking around the way people look at real estate they're pricing. Not bad, he said, like he was grading a student project. He bought a cinnamon roll and ate it at the counter. Said he was proud of me. I thanked him and moved to the next customer. He came back the following week. This time he sat down and talked about expansion, franchise models, growth strategy, dividing responsibilities so I could focus on operations while he handled the business side. He said it like it was already a reasonable plan being finalized, rather than something he was asking. I told him I wasn't looking to expand. He said I was thinking too small. I said the business was mine, and the direction it was going was mine to decide. He didn't push it that day. He just looked at me the way he did when we were kids, patient in a way that wasn't actually psychosis, the look of someone waiting for you to come around. The text started a week later. Talk to Mom and Dad. They think it only makes sense that family has a stake in this. Grandpa's name and recipes gave you the foundation. You didn't build it from nothing. I read it and put my phone face down. A few days after that, I'm not trying to be a problem, but you said yourself last Thanksgiving you weren't sure you could keep up the pace. I just think you need to be realistic about what you can handle long term. I did not remember saying I wasn't sure I could keep up. I remembered saying I was tired. Those are different things. He called on a Sunday. His voice was calm the way it gets when he's already decided on the outcome and is just waiting for you to arrive at it. He said all I needed to do was add his name to the LLC as co-owner, 50-50, simple amendment, nothing dramatic. I'd keep the day-to-day. He'd handle growth. It was cleaner than doing everything alone. I told him no. Grandpa would have wanted this kept in the family, he said. It is in the family, I said. My family. He gave it to me. He hung up. 2 weeks later, a process server knocked on my apartment door at 7 in the morning. Inside the envelope was a civil complaint, My brother versus me. He was claiming co-ownership of the business and the van on the basis of an alleged verbal agreement I had made to share the inheritance in exchange for future unspecified support from the family. Attached were signed affidavits from both of my parents, stating they had personally witnessed me express doubt about managing the business and indicate that the inheritance should benefit the whole family together. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. My parents had signed sworn statements describing conversations that had not happened the way they were described, in support of a lawsuit that would take away the only thing I had ever genuinely built on my own. I thought about calling them and asking if they understood what they had signed. But I already knew the answer. They had always believed Grant more than they believed me. This was just the first time it came with paperwork. I called Mr. Drummond, the attorney who had helped me set up the LLC, and read him the whole complaint. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said the filing was thin, no written agreement, no financial contribution from Grant, no documentation of any working partnership. This isn't a strong case, he said. We'll handle it. The court date was set for late October. I kept going to the bakery every morning at 4. I kept doing the deliveries. I kept thanking Miss Fenn and updating the specials board and answering emails from new accounts. But at night, alone in the parking lot after closing, I felt the particular weight of what was coming. Not fear. Exact grief. For the something the family I had kept hoping might be something other than what they were. I also, during those weeks, ordered a Sony digital recorder online. Something in me knew to do it. Some version of that 12-year-old said, "Keep the record." The county courthouse downtown had wide marble steps and fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly more worn than they actually were. I arrived early and sat outside in the cold October air before going in. Mr. Drummond met me at the entrance. Grant was already inside with my parents, my brother in a blazer, my mother in her good coat, my father with his arms folded, already at home in the room the way he always managed to be. Grant's attorney was smooth and unhurried. He described me to the court as someone who had consistently struggled with pressure, someone whose own words, spoken in front of witnesses, showed she had always intended to share the inheritance with family. He used the word concern repeatedly. He used family interest as though it were a self-slaving phrase. Grant testified with practiced sadness. He said I was the kind of person who took on too much and didn't know how to ask for help. He said he had watched it happen before, and he was worried. He said he only wanted to make sure I didn't burn out on something I had worked hard to build. My father took the stand and said he had heard me say more than once that I wished someone could share the load. My mother said she had always understood the inheritance to be something the whole family would eventually benefit from together, and that my grandfather would have wanted that. Grant's attorney submitted my own texts, the ones where I mentioned being tired after a long week, stretched thin during the holiday rush. He framed them as evidence of instability. I sat with my hands on the table and watched them build the story they had agreed on. I felt the gallery's attention settle on me. The overwhelmed daughter, the one who clearly needed looking after. I kept my face still. I had learned early that showing emotion in a room this only made people agree with whoever was calling you emotional. I let them finish. After the recess, Mr. Drummond stood. He started with dates. He pointed out something Grant's attorney had not highlighted. Every message my brother had ever sent about co-ownership, every conversation about splitting the business, every text about family deserving a stake. All of it was time-stamped after the lifestyle blog piece ran in March. All of it came after the third delivery account was added. All of it came after the business started turning consistent profit. There is not a single communication about partnership that predates the business becoming financially viable, Mr. Drummond said. Not one. He moved to the financial records, equipment purchases, supply invoices, health permit fees, insurance premiums, the LLC registration, the trademark filing. Every document listed my name and my account. Grant had not contributed $1 an hour or a single phone call made on behalf of the business. Grant's attorney objected. The judge allowed it. Then Mr. Drummond picked up the digital recorder. Your Honor, my client anticipated ongoing pressure and legally recorded a phone conversation with the plaintiff this past August. With the court's permission. Judge Serrano nodded. He pressed play. The room heard my brother's voice, clear, unhurried, the voice of someone who believed what he was about to say was reasonable, and what it said was not concern for a struggling sister, it was instruction. Just add my name to the LLC, that's the easy version. If you make me go the hard route, this is going to get ugly for you. I've already got Mom and Dad lined up. You can do this now, or you can explain yourself to a judge. Your call. The recording ended. My mother turned her face toward the far wall. My father lowered his head until he was looking at the rail in front of him. My brother sat very still and had, for the first time all morning, nothing on his face at all. Judge Serrano let the silence hold for a moment. Mr. Calloway, she said, addressing my brother, in this recording you state that your parents are already lined up. Is that a reference to the signed affidavits submitted to this court? He said he wasn't sure that was exactly what he'd meant. The recording is not ambiguous, the judge said. She looked at my parents. You each submitted sworn statements to this court. I want to be direct about what that means. A sworn affidavit that contains information you did not personally witness as described is a serious matter. I trust you both understand that. My mother's hands went still. My father said nothing. Judge Serrano looked at the room. She took a moment before she spoke. The plaintiff's claim requires one of three things: a demonstrated prior agreement, documented evidence of contribution, or grounds to challenge the validity of the bequest. None of those have been established here. The handwritten will of Mr. Peter Calloway is a valid legal document, properly witnessed and notarized, naming his granddaughters as sole beneficiary of the business assets. The defendant organized the LLC, registered the trademark, and made every operational and financial decision independently. There is no partnership. There is no prior agreement. There is, however, a recorded conversation showing pressure applied at the threat of litigation. She looked at my brother. This claim is dismissed in its entirety. The defendant retains full ownership of Calloway's Crumb and all associated business assets and vehicles. Any further legal action or interference with the defendant's business operations will be treated as harassment and subject to sanctions. The gavel came down once. Mr. Drummond gathered his documents without rushing. I sat still for a moment before I stood. I asked Judge Serrano if I could say something before we adjourned. She said yes. I turned around. My parents were already reaching for their coats. My brother was looking at the table in front of him. I spent years trying to be responsible enough that you'd see me, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. I tried to be good enough, quiet enough, useful enough, and when I finally built something real, entirely on my own, without any help from any of you, the first thing you did was try to take it. I wasn't angry when I said it, I was just finished. I hope the next person you do this to records the phone call too. I picked up my folder and walked out. Outside, the October sky was flat gray and windless. I stood on the courthouse steps for a minute, breathing in air that smelled like fallen leaves and exhaust from the parking structure across the street. Mr. Drummond came out and shook my hand, said the judge had been unusually direct. I thanked him. That evening I drove to the bakery after closing. The display cases were empty, the oven was off. Miss Fenn had already wiped down the tables and stacked the chairs. The place smelled like cinnamon and flour, and a little bit of the bleach she used at the end of the day. I sat at the counter in the quiet and thought about my grandfather. The way he slid the envelope across the table without making it dramatic. The way he said, "You're the one who showed up," like it was just a plain fact he was reporting. He had seen me clearly. He had trusted me with something that mattered. He had put it in writing. I pulled out my phone. I went to my contacts and found my brother's name, then my mother's, then my father's. I blocked them one at a time, without hesitation, and then went through every other platform and did the same. Not because I was angry. I had used up most of that a long time ago. Because every time I had left that door open, something had walked through it and taken from me. And I was finished with open doors. The following weeks were quiet in the way weeks are when nothing dramatic happens. A few bakery regulars who had heard about the lawsuit through the local grapevine made a point to stop in and say they were glad it worked out. Miss Fenn, who did not ask me directly what had happened but clearly knew, set a cup of coffee on the counter in front of me one morning, without saying a word. I thought about what I might have done differently, said something earlier, drawn a line before it ever reached a courtroom. But I didn't think about it long, because I knew the answer. I had known since I was 12 that saying something only gave people something to argue against. The only thing that had ever actually protect me, the spiral notebook, the LLC, the trademark, the LCs, the trademark, the recorder. Silence, when it is your own choice, is not the same as disappearing. It is something else entirely. Something you can aim, something you can hold until the right moment, something no one can take from you or twist into a story about your limitations. The bakery opened at 7 every morning. I was there at 4. The cinnamon rolls sold out by 9:30 on Saturdays. I did not wait for anyone to tell me I had earned it. I already knew.